in my experience, one of the biggest things that a more ritualistic approach to prayer has done for me, or a deeper prayer approach, or a more disciplined prayer approach, has definitely brought into focus for me how sinful of a person I am and who I actually am as a person. It brings you to the reality of who you really are. And that's one of the things that I hear in reference to the walk of a Christian is be honest with yourself about who you are.
Mm-hmm. Well, like my observation, so like what's going through my mind when you're saying this is the question somebody might have of like, I don't know, having an altar and having, these more physical things involved in your prayer. It's just often going to be like, why do I need that? And I guess I kind of have two seemingly contradictory answers to that, which is, the first one is, well, nobody says that you need it.
Right.
It's not a matter of you have to do it this way. It's a matter of it's better if you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just what I'm saying from my own personal experience. And I guess like, can you trust somebody who's telling you from their experience that this has worked? That doesn't have to be me. There's plenty of others that are telling you that. And then the other seemingly contradictory answer is, are you sure that you don't need it? Like you've never actually tried it, so you don't really know what you're missing out on. You're operating over here entirely in the realm of ideas. So like you're trying to figure these things out strictly as like abstract concepts or theorizing about what is and isn't necessary or what is and isn't good, but you've never actually engaged in it. You've never actually dared to approach it. So you don't really know.
Mm-hmm. And I will add to that, like David just said, a person may have never actually engaged in it. I will say the process of me engaging in it has been a process that has gone on for probably about 4 years or more, maybe more than that. Like the amount of my engagement, even when I set up my home altar for the first time, was much more limited than it is now. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where, like, coming from or being part of the modern Mennonite tradition, it's one of those things where you almost kind of have to wet your feet a little bit, and then you're not so sure if this is what you want or want to be part of, or if you want to go deeper. Because I will say this, like, and you'll probably get to this with one of your questions, but I will allude to this. Going to a deeper type of prayer like this does expose you to very direct spiritual attacks from demons. Like it does.
Mm-hmm.
And you either have to choose to pull back in fear and apprehension. Like
Jesus chose to approach that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like it's very remarkable, the description in the Bible of Jesus going into the wilderness, that Jesus went into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil.
Well, so like the flip side of that is you do I've run into this a lot personally. Like even some people I know and respect will say like, oh, you encounter these dark forces when you pray like this. That's proof that what you're doing is not Christian, because otherwise you wouldn't be encountering demons. And I guess my answer to that is like, well, like what you said, Jesus stands against that.
Right.
The example of the prophets and the apostles stands against that. And then like, I don't know if you value it at all, like all of the teaching of the saints throughout the history of the church is basically when you pray, you will be assaulted by demons.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is going to happen because they hate prayer. The forces of the devil pray. The forces of the devil hate prayer. And like this is why Paul says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Like it's in that context, I believe. Like it's that you're engaging in an actual conflict with spiritual forces.
Yeah.
It is too much for you, but since you're engaging in prayer, you're engaging in the thing that you need to stand, which is God himself.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And what I was going to say before you both so rudely interrupted me was that,
well, we didn't care what you were going to say.
You either have the choice of pulling back, and when I say pull back, remember when God asked the Israelites to draw close to the mountain, and they pulled back and said, no, Moses, you go draw close for us.
Mm-hmm.
You can either do that and subsequently be less close to God, or you can go even further. You can go deeper.
Mhm.
Because and you have to go deeper if you want to find the power of Christ to overcome the demons. So that's been my experience with that.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, just like more along the lines of like actually physically engaging in prayer. You said we'd probably talk more about prostrating.
Oh, I don't know if that'd be in this video.
Yeah, but there's a little bit to say in
Yeah,
this
yeah,
video
yeah.
about that. Like prostrating when you pray, like for one thing, usually the words translated, we've been over this before, the words translated in the New Testament as worship, both in Hebrew and Greek, literally mean prostrate. But like I just find for myself, like when I'm going through some difficulty, like the best thing for me to do oftentimes is just to go to my altar and just prostrate, and sometimes not even say anything, just like let it go, clear it out. And I don't know, like when you prostrate, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position, and but also in a receptive position.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're prostrating before God, it's like you're trusting God to, I don't know, not chop your head off. So it's like when you prostrate yourself, I don't know, like I just have this image in my mind when you're prostrating yourself before the king, like you're putting yourself in a position where your life is in the king's hands. And that's what you're doing with God. It's like you're recognizing my life is in your hands. I don't know, like you could say you have this prostration of the mind that goes on where you're like mentally consenting. But I don't know, like for me, it's just the experience is very real when you take that to the next level and actually prostrate.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the same thing, I was thinking like, we've all attended Orthodox services more than once. And there's a huge difference in something like that between sitting back as an observer and observing the service and actually participating in it. Like that kind of service is a very participatory service. There's all kinds of physical things that the people in the church are doing along with the priests, along with the prayers, along with everything.
Yeah.
Like for example, one thing that I notice is like every time the name of the Trinity is invoked in any context, people will cross themselves. And it's like, I imagine it's something like a sign of reverence for the name of the Holy Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience has been like, well, do it with them, and you will find that you are actually holding the Holy Trinity and the name of the Holy Trinity, like actually engaging in that physically showing that respect and honor to God, to the name of God, has a real effect on your thinking, has a real effect on your, I don't know, I guess you would say your soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a lot of what we do in our conversations and we approach things, as I was saying early in the opening words, we approach things with this sort of technical, theological, intellectual, abstract approach. Most of your spiritual life is not that and can't even be expressed in that way.
Right. But the other side is there's unfortunately not another way to express it.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like that's the thing that I run into oftentimes is like I'm trying to figure out how to express something that just can't be expressed.
Yeah. Well,
and so the two approaches are either this abstract philosophical language or just say like, well, just try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.